Welcome to our channel. In this video, we will take you on an exciting journey to explore the world of Naguib Mahfouz. We will discuss the most important points and show you how his works and creations shaped and changed Arabic literature. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel and always activate the notifications button to stay up to date with everything new. Let's get started.
Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at the life and works of Naguib Mahfouz. He's a writer who, well, his impact goes way beyond just his Nobel Prize. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Not just like his books, but also, his life, the things that influenced him, and how his writing changed over time. He really became a powerful voice in Arabic literature.
Yeah, Mahfouz's story is incredible. Like from growing up in Cairo in the Gamaleya district to, becoming this internationally known figure, his life and his writing, they offer this really fascinating look into Egyptian society, history, and just the whole human experience, really.
Gamaleya wasn't just like a setting for him, though, was it? It felt like he used it almost like a character in a lot of his novels.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Gamaleya became this kind of microcosm of the world in his writing, reflecting the complexity of relationships, social dynamics, and, well, I guess the search for meaning, all within this vibrant but often tough environment. It's a recurring thing in his work, and I think it shows how deeply connected he was to that place, to community.
And his early life in Gamaleya, that was also shaped by some pretty big historical events. I'm thinking specifically of the 1919 Egyptian Revolution.
Oh, the revolution definitely had a huge impact on Mahfouz. He was just a kid then. And you can see this reflected in his novel Between the Palace and the Garden. It was part of his kind of historical fiction phase. The book looks at the clash between old traditions and new ideas, the fight for independence, and how political chaos affects regular people's lives. These themes, they pop up again and again throughout his writing.
It really makes you think about how the things we experience, especially when we're young, can have a big impact on our creativity, right?
For sure. And another key thing that shaped his writing was his early interest in philosophy. He studied at Cairo University. He later switched to literature. But that philosophical background, it's woven into all of his work. He wasn't just watching society, he was like digging deeper, exploring questions about existence, fate, free will, and responsibility themes that go beyond any specific time or culture.
It's really interesting to see how all of his intellectual pursuits, they all kind of blended together in his writing. But I'm curious about something a bit more personal. He kept his marriage a secret for 10 years, right? That's pretty unusual, even for back then.
Yeah, it's definitely unconventional, even in Egypt in the 1940s. Some people think it was out of a sense of duty to his family. He might have felt like he needed to take care of his mother and sister before starting his own family.
And his financial situation probably played a part too.
Oh, for sure. He wasn't exactly rolling in money back then, and getting married could have made things even tougher. It's interesting, though. It was actually his work writing film scripts that gave him more financial security and that allowed him to finally get married and start a family.
So he was living this kind of double life, a government worker by day and a budding novelist at night. Did those two worlds ever cross over into his writing?
It's hard to say for sure, but working in different ministries probably gave him a unique look into, well, how power works, how bureaucracy functions, and all the relationships that make those systems tick. His ability to observe and understand people, which he honed in those settings, that definitely enriched his writing.
It's like he was silently observing, gathering details from everyday life, and then those details, they later found their way into his fiction.
His writing, it went through some really interesting changes over the years, wouldn't you say?
Totally. It's like he was always pushing himself, never wanted to just stick to one thing. He started with historical realism, then shifted into social realism, focusing on the lives of everyday people in modern Cairo. Books like Cairo Modern and Midak Alley.
And he didn't stop there. He dove into the complexities of the human mind in novels like The Mirage. It shows how versatile he was and how he mastered psychological realism. He was always pushing the boundaries, exploring different sides of what it means to be human.
And then he went back to social realism, but on a much grander scale with the Cairo trilogy, right? That feels like a major turning point in his career.
The Cairo trilogy is pretty much considered his masterpiece. It covers 3 generations of a family in Cairo, and it captures all the social and political upheaval in Egypt during the early 20th century. The trilogy gives us a panoramic view of Egyptian society, tackling themes of old ways versus new ways, family dynamics, and the search for identity in a world that's constantly changing.
And it was his later work, especially Children of Our Alley, that brought him international recognition, but also a lot of controversy.
Children of Our Alley, with its allegorical exploration of faith and power, yeah, that one definitely became a lightning rod.
It's kind of ironic, a book that explores those big questions about faith, free will, and searching for meaning would cause such strong reactions.
It wasn't just about exploring faith, though. It was how Mahfouz portrayed religious figures, using allegory and symbolism to, well, maybe challenge some traditional interpretations.
Let's dig into that a bit more. We'll be right back to unpack Children of Our Alley and how it affected Mahfouz's life and legacy. All right, so we're back. And I'm really curious to get into Children of Our Alley. It's supposed to be this really complex allegory, but like what exactly made it so controversial?
Well, the controversy comes from how Mahfouz uses allegory to, kind of reimagine the stories of prophets and religious figures. He puts these stories in the setting of a Cairo alleyway, and the alley itself represents the world in miniature.
So it's not just retelling old stories. He's presenting them in a new way that maybe challenges how people traditionally see them. Can you give us an example?
Sure, yeah. Take the character of Gebelawi, the creator of the alley, the one who oversees everything. He's a powerful figure, kind of like a god figure, but he's not shown as purely good. He's also distant and sometimes even cruel. And that creates a more complicated and maybe even disturbing view of the relationship between creator and creation.
Yeah, that's interesting because it makes you think about faith and power from different angles. He's not just saying this is good, this is bad.
Right, exactly. And that complexity, it's there with other characters too. Adam, Gebelawi's first son, he can be seen as representing Adam, right? But Adam is also flawed. He's got these desires and ambitions that lead to, well, conflict and suffering, showing Adam as this imperfect, human-like figure that really goes against the traditional idea of him being perfect and sinless.
I can definitely see how that would be provocative, especially in a place where religion is such a big part of people's lives.
Some people saw it as a direct attack on their beliefs, while others, they saw it as a thoughtful, even if it was challenging, way to explore the human experience within the context of faith and spirituality.
But this whole thing about faith, that's just one layer of the allegory, isn't it? Some critics see it as a political commentary, too.
Oh, absolutely. The alley itself, with all its different residents and their power struggles, you can see it as a microcosm of Egyptian society. The different children, or generations, they can represent different social or political groups fighting for control.
So you can read the novel on a bunch of different levels, and each reader might walk away with a totally different understanding of it.
That's what makes truly great literature so powerful. It speaks to us on so many levels, makes us think critically and engage with these complex ideas in ways that connect to our own lives and perspectives.
This reminds me of what you were saying earlier about how Mahfouz wasn't just observing society, he was like really digging into the big questions about existence.
Yeah, his background in philosophy really shows in his approach. He doesn't shy away from those tough questions about morality, justice, and what it all means. In Children of Our Alley, he uses this framework of religious allegory to wrestle with those universal questions in a way that's both thought-provoking and kind of unsettling.
And he paid a high price for that boldness. The assassination attempt, that must have been terrifying.
It was a horrific act of violence, and it really shows the kind of person Mahfouz was, that he didn't let it silence him. He kept writing, exploring those tough themes, expressing his views, even when he was in danger.
It's a powerful reminder that we need to protect freedom of expression, even when it comes to ideas that some people might find offensive.
It also shows how powerful literature can be. It can start debates, challenge us to think differently, and force us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we live in.
This whole conversation makes me want to read Children of Our Alley myself and see what I get out of it. But before we do that, I'm really interested in this part of Mahfouz's life, his decision to stay in Egypt, even as he was getting famous all over the world.
That's a really fascinating part of his story, and it tells us a lot about him and his connection to his home country. We should definitely explore that more.
It really is amazing, He becomes this internationally recognized author, but he chooses to stay in Egypt. He even decides not to travel to get his Nobel Prize. He sends his daughters instead. What do you think that says about him?
I think it points to a deep sense of belonging, a real connection to his homeland, a connection that was stronger than than the pull of fame and recognition on a global stage. He found his inspiration in the everyday life of Cairo and the stories of the people there, and in the rich culture of Egypt.
I wonder, did staying in Egypt, did that ever affect how many people got to read his work? Like, did it limit his audience?
Well, he may have physically stayed in Egypt, but his words, they traveled all over the world. Through translations and adaptations, his stories reach readers and viewers from all sorts of different backgrounds. I mean, he was breaking down barriers and giving people a glimpse into a world they might not have understood otherwise.
So his writing, it became like a bridge between cultures, helping people to understand and appreciate each other.
Yeah, exactly. His novels, they really capture what Egyptian society is like, but not in some idealized way. He portrays it realistically. And that resonates with readers everywhere. He gets the little details of family relationships, the challenges that everyday people face, and those universal themes, love, loss, ambition, betrayal. Those are things that go beyond any specific culture.
And his characters, man, they're so well developed, so real. Even when their lives seem completely different from ours, we can still relate to how they feel and what they go through.
His characters aren't these perfect heroes. They're flawed, they're complex, they're grappling with moral dilemmas, societal pressures, their own internal struggles. That realism, along with his skill in weaving these intricate plots and creating such vivid settings, that's what makes his work so engaging and thought-provoking.
And it's not just the characters or the settings. Mahfouz, he had a way of, weaving history into his stories, making it a vital part of everything. You can sense the weight of those historical events, the feeling of a nation going through these huge changes, and how it all shapes the lives of his characters.
You're absolutely right. He doesn't shy away from depicting the political and social turmoil of his time, the struggle for independence, the clash between old and new, the rise of new ideologies. All of these historical forces, they form this backdrop against which his characters have to navigate their own lives.
So looking back at his life, his works, and his lasting impact, what would you say is Naguib Mahfouz's most important contribution to the world of literature?
For me, it's his ability to connect the East and West, to introduce Arabic literature to a global audience, and to show how universal the human experience is, even when it's seen through the lens of Egyptian society. He challenged stereotypes, he encouraged people to understand each other better, and he left behind a literary legacy that continues to inspire and resonate with readers all around the world.
He's often called the father of modern Arabic literature, and it's easy to see why. His influence on writers, artists, thinkers, it's huge.
And his influence goes way beyond just literature. His books have been made into movies and TV shows, so his stories reach an even bigger audience, and they spark these conversations about important social, political, and philosophical issues.
This deep dive has been quite a journey, don't you think?
It really has.
Yeah.
Exploring the life and work of Naguib Mahfouz has been, it's been an honor. His writing gives us a window into a rich and complex culture. It challenges us to think about those big questions about what it means to be human, and it reminds us of the power of stories to connect us across cultures and generations.
Well, I hope this has made you curious to check out Mahfouz's work and discover all the amazing stuff that's in those pages. Whether you start with the Cairo trilogy, Medak Alley, or his controversial masterpiece, Children of Our Alley, you're in for a real treat. It'll make you think, that's for sure.
And maybe, as you're diving into his world, you'll start to see your own surroundings in a new light, with a little more curiosity. Because, as Mahfouz showed us so brilliantly, every street, every alleyway, every human heart, they all hold a story waiting to be told.
Until next time, happy reading!